And he gives three broad instructions about sex. He says, sex is for your sanctification. Sex must be engaged in the right context. You must have the right context for sex. And finally, gentlemen, you have sex with your wife in order to honor her. So you see the operative words: sanctification, context, and honor. Let me show you exactly how that works, and we'll get probably more practical than you want to get. Look at verse 3. For this is the will of God, our sanctification, that is, that you abstain from sexual immorality. Now, we're not sanctified according to the will of God. It is through living out the will of God we're sanctified in the area of sexual intimacy. Sexual intimacy sanctifies you and sanctifies me. What is the word sanctify? That's one of those big old church words. You know, what does the word sanctify? In a secular sense, the etymology of sanctify means when something is designed and created and it performs for the purpose for which it was designed and created, it is said to be sanctified. In other words, you have a pen, and that pen was designed and created in order to write, and if that pen writes, that pen in that sense is sanctified because it is doing exactly that for which it was designed and created to do, right? Therefore, we are to be sanctified in the intimacy of sex, in marriage, always, and that sanctifies us. It helps us perform and live the life that God designed us to live. Let me tell you something, folks. Selfishness will be exposed in many places, but nowhere like if you and I are married. Right, guys? Right, ladies? Man, our selfishness comes out. If we're egotists in marriage, our egotism will be displayed. You just can't hide it. If we're undisciplined, it'll come out in marriage. If we're greedy, it'll come out in marriage. If we have a sharp tongue, it'll come out in marriage. You see, marriage is nothing like marriage to sort of sharpen us up and let us see ourselves as we really are. That's the process of sanctification, becoming the person that God designed you and designed me to come. There is nothing that helps in that more than sanctification. And that's how we get to be sanctified, is that we are married, and the sexual act, the intimacy there, helps sanctify us. Now, what do we do about sex? The world in which we live, some people deify sex. I've had people tell me, you know, if I couldn't have sex, I wouldn't care anything about living. We've made sex God. Remember Helen Gurley Brown, who was editor of Cosmopolitan for all those years? And when she was in her 70s, she was interviewed, and someone asked her, what are the three most important things in life? She said, sex. They said, okay, what's the other two? She said, I don't know. And in order to help her, the interviewer said, well, what about love? She said, no, love is not one, because nobody can practice it and nobody can define it. She was saying for her and for a lot of other people in our broken world, in our culture, sex has been deified. It has become your God. It is what your life operates around. That happens in our culture. It is deified. Others, sex is debased. Oh, it's dirty. It's wrong. It has no meaning. I have talked in counseling to more than one wife who said, if I never had sexual relationship again, I would think that would be wonderful. I know we're married, but you know, I don't want to have any part of intimacy with my husband. That's the forgotten part of our life. You see, some people go through marriage back to back. I'm married and she's married, but hey, I do my thing, she does her thing, back to back. Other people go through marriage side to side. Oh, we're friends and we get along and we live together, but there's no real sexual intimacy. Others go through marriage face to face. And that's where we want to be, face to face with intimacy. And we're looking for intimacy in the sense of wholeness. I will say this over and over again in many different ways, but listen carefully. Therefore, we know in human sexuality, it is a whole life commitment to a whole body commitment. That's marriage. It's a whole life commitment to a whole body commitment. Sex outside of marriage, you tear the body and the soul apart. It is a whole life commitment, social, economically, everything you have, to a whole body commitment. That is God's plan. Therefore, sex is not deified. Sex is not debased and said, oh, it's unimportant. It is very, very important. Remember, it is a gift of God.